Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to my channel. I am Monet and you are watching Life is Monet. We are T-minus like 72 hours away from Hellbent coming out, and I'm nervous and excited at the same time. I feel like this is one of Leigh Bardugo's most polarizing book. It was her first introduction to adult fantasy, and I feel like when the book came out, it was very popular, and then it kind of became 50-50 if you liked it or if you didn't like it. But as we anticipate the release of Hellbent, more people have been picking it up since its release, and I feel like now there's more people that dislike Ninth House than there was that liked it. And so when I first read the book, I loved it. I gave it 5 stars and I felt like I was in good company. But now it seems like, the girlies that loved Ninth House, I don't know where they went, because it feels like I'm standing in the paint by myself, but it's okay. I do need to reread Ninth House, so I will be doing that before Hellbent comes out, and hopefully I can finish in the 3 days that I have before the release of the sequel. If you don't know what Ninth House is about, we're following this character by the name of Alex Stern, and Alex can basically see ghosts, and this has pretty much thrown off the course of her life, because anytime she tried to communicate that as a child, she was taken for a mentally unstable individual, and she was in and out of different mental institutions and mental evaluations. Eventually in her teens, she got caught up with the wrong crowd and into the wrong things, trying to numb her experiences and just deal with the things that she was not able to really talk about with anyone, and it threw her life completely off course. Now Alex is older, and her mom has basically gotten to the point where she's not really sure if she will ever get her life together, and after an incident, Alex gets this offer to go to Yale University, and while she's there, it's a free ride, but all she has to do for this is to work for these secret societies as a supervisor over their rituals that they do on individuals, on bodies, whether they're alive or dead. And Alex is having a really hard time at Yale, balancing basically not ever going to school or class at all, and now she's at a prestigious university. She has another secret component to her life that she cannot share with her friends and her family, and so she's just failing in the wind. One day there is a body that is discovered, and Alex feels this innate attraction to just finding out more details about this young lady's life and what led up to her death, and she feels just obligated to hunt down details around this case. And there's really nothing on the surface level that connects this young lady's death to Yale University, but Alex just kind of feels like this kinship to her, and she doesn't want her to go forgotten and just passed over as a throwaway in a way that Alex feel like she would if she had been in this girl's position. And so we basically follow her as she balances all these things at Yale University, as well as finding out more details around this young lady's death. And there's more things to the story, but I really don't want to spoil it for you guys. I feel that I am really nervous going into book 2. There's a lot of apprehension I have, because the last couple books I've read from Leigh Bardugo have not been top tier. I feel like when I first read from her, my first 3 or 4 books, I absolutely loved. And then my last 3 books, I did not love as much. So right now we're 50-50 on this. I don't know if I'm going to Ninth House the second time around as much as I did the first time around. I don't plan to change my original rating. I'm reading this for context, just because it's been so long since I read the first book, and I would be very shocked and disappointed if I reread Ninth House and didn't like it at all, because that is also very, very possible. Done with my second read of Ninth House. I didn't change my original rating. I still feel like the things that I did not enjoy the second time around could literally be boiled down to the fact that this was my second time reading it, and so I was already having some type of expectations around where we were going. With that being said, I am so glad that I reread this, because there were so many aspects about the book that I didn't necessarily remember, and a lot of things that I didn't appreciate the first time around. So the caveats of me not really enjoying this book as much as I did the first time around, just because I've already been exposed to the story, is kind of offset with the fact that I have a higher appreciation for what Leigh Bardugo did with the story. Another thing that I came to realize, at first I really loved this book when I read it, and I thought that it was really good, and when I seen the massive amount of just hate that Leigh Bardugo was getting for Ninth House and how many people just don't like the book, I was kind of shocked, because I was just what is happening? This is Leigh Bardugo. It didn't feel so far out of the box for what I had known for her writing before. However, I read Ninth House first. This was the first Leigh Bardugo book I had ever read. And then subsequently, after Ninth House, I read Shadow and Bone and then Six of Crows. So I was introduced to Leigh Bardugo from her adult writing. And so I think that while I saw the sentiments of this still being a classic Leigh Bardugo story, especially with her writing style, I can see see how individuals who had been reading her YAs, how there could be a huge like disconnect stepping into her adult book. So I have a lot more understanding in that aspect, as well as I don't think the story is for everyone. I think this is a peculiar mix of your crime detection novels mixed with a fantastical element. This could very much be a crime sci-fi detective novel, or even like a paranormal detective novel, but there's just so many other elements that are in the story that stops it from being boxed in that nature. And so I think it's hard to have like realistic expectations going into Ninth House, especially depending on what type of reviews you're reading or hearing from other individuals who have read the story. Depending on what their takeaways are, it's going to be really hard for you to grasp what to expect when you go into Ninth House. And I think that just in general, your expectations going into the story will significantly impact how you view it. I had not been exposed to Leigh Bardugo before. I was not in the book community. I was not reading or watching reviews. So when I picked this book up, there was literally zero expectations. And I read it like as soon as it was released. So there really wasn't time for me to even get opinions from other individuals. And this was again before like I really started my YouTube channel. And so with that, my predispositions to the story was really none. I didn't have anything. So I've definitely come to understand why this book can be incredibly polarizing. Another thing that like I am now realizing is that I actually don't like Alex Stern as a character. I don't like her as a main character. And I don't think I liked her the first time around. Like, she was the vehicle in which the story was moving through, and I never paid attention to how much I didn't like her. I just knew that I did not like her. Like, I knew that I didn't like her, but I didn't know that I disliked her. And so reading this time around and just kind of watching her go through the motions of solving this crime again made me kind of be like, huh, like I actually don't like Alex Stern at all. But that's not unusual for me. I've read several books and stories that like I have absolutely loved that are told from main character POVs that I can't stand. The checklist that I need from my main characters in order for me to enjoy a story, like me liking them, is not even in the top fucking 15. Like, you'd be surprised how many characters I can't fucking stand. Call Hilo is one of them. I can't stand Hilo. I don't like Tao from Rage of Dragons. So that just kind of solidifies that so many things about this book that was a deal breaker for everyone else just it's not applicable here. It doesn't apply to me, and I'm not going to pretend to make it apply to me. So I am ready to go into book 2. So the way that this book kind of ended, this is a small spoiler, is that Darlington, as I mentioned before, he's missing, and we know that Alex kind of had something to do with his disappearance, and no one can locate him. And so where this book kind of ends is that we get a little more information about what truly happened to Darlington and where he might possibly be. And Alex has this idea of this kind of like inclination of like hunting down this source to figure out if this will lead us to Darlington. We don't actually know if this is true. And then I don't really trust Alex as a character either. Not only do I kind of dislike her, I don't trust her. I don't find that she's a reliable narrator, nor is she supposed to be. And so I still feel like I'm at a distance going into book 2 because I don't know what to expect. I don't know if we're on the right route. I don't know if this effort is going to bear fruit. And then we don't know how receptive Darlington is going to be when and if we find him, because where he and Alex kind of left off, they should be meeting outside. He should be catching his fade, if I'm gonna be honest with you. So right before I sat down to film this update, my doorbell rang, which I am almost certain is my pre-orders, including Hellbent. So I'm gonna go grab those, and I plan to do nothing but read this book. I'm gonna try to break this down in the same way that I did my Babel review, where I kind of went, I think I did like 5 updates per sections. I'm gonna divide the book up by certain chapters, and then we'll do chapter updates in this vlog. I'm gonna be honest with y'all, like, if I look calm, it's a facade. It's a lie. I am thoroughly impressed by what is happening in this book. Leigh Bardugo has kicked up the stakes 5 times higher than what was happening in Ninth House. We have the convergence of previous storylines that were unresolved. we're making a lot more progress when it comes down to Darlington. And I have to say that like I'm even impressed with how she's rolling out that aspect. In my last update, I mentioned that I wasn't really sure if what Alex was working towards was going to bear fruit, and I was a little nervous that we might spend majority of this book continuing to look for Darlington, and somehow we're in the middle of like, we've made so much progress towards him, and yet we ended up being made further away from our goals. On top of that, we have other bodies that seem to be coming up on the campus, and we're not exactly sure if they're tied into the societies just yet, but my guess is of course they are. And then there's some things from Alex's past that seems to be catching up with her, and she can't seem to make the right decision, which I find very, very interesting. I do want to preface that by saying that like Alex is continuing to be a very standoffish, sarcastic, and just all around like hard to stomach character, and I do think that this is even more intentional this time around. If you need to like your main characters, this is not the book for you, because she is not likable. On top of that, there isn't a romance in the story that is going to showcase another side of her, and I do think that when you have other characters within a story that finds love or attraction towards a particular person that's hard to like, it does help you stomach them a little more, but we don't get that aspect. There may be a small romantic element that may have happened between her and Darlington, but us as readers, we know nothing about that as of now. And also Darlington's perspectives and his thoughts are still not revealed to the reader, and so this makes it harder to like Alex. There's really no other possible love interest within this story. Everyone's just constantly annoyed with her, and that's just who she is. I am still finding, like, especially after rereading book 1 and going into this book, I actually like her less. Like, I dislike her more in this story, but somehow it is still absolutely working for me as I'm reading it. I am excited for where we might be going in the next couple of chapters. I'm nervous. If she converges all of these different storylines and plot points that we are following right now, I'm gonna be like palpitating on my couch with high blood pressure and a racing heart rate, because I don't know how we're gonna get to a point where like all of these things are gonna be explosive when they collide together. So far it's just so interesting. The story is moving at a much faster and just like enjoyable pace than what was happening in Ninth House, and yeah, I'm in awe. I'm surprised. I did not expect this. I thought that it was gonna take equal or maybe even more patience to get further in the story, but we're taking off at a rapid pace right now, and I'm very satisfied with that. I do foresee me being able to finish this book pretty soon. I am tabbing as I go, which is enhancing my experience. I am making a tabbing note in the book every time I feel annoyance or just irritation with Alex and the things that she's doing within the book, because it's something that I just want to track for my own self. And I do feel a little nervous when it comes down to Dawes, because Dawes is just such a timid, reserved, like reticent character, and I think that she's kind of like above her head with the things that are happening, and she's definitely the weakest link in Alex's team, but it's really just Alex and Dawes taking on all these different things themselves, and they really have no help and no assistance. And you would think that after the events that happened in book 1, people would be more willing to take Alex at face value, to consider her words and what she's saying with merit, but she is being even more so disregarded than she was in book 1 in this book, which I can understand her frustration, but she's been moving in like this solitude kind of way, and she's been doing things on her own with very little help, and I foresee her continuing to do that, but I also see that she's getting a lot more blowbacks about her decision, especially when it comes down to the Greys, and allowing them to merge with her, establishing connections with her, which is one of the things that we established as a very like red flag, big old don't do in book 1, and even those things are starting to come back and bite her, because these Greys are now tying into Alex in a way that she no longer has complete control, she no longer has the upper hand, and there seems to be something sinister happening within the background of the story that I'm picking up on, but it hasn't really been touched yet. So all of these things, it just makes me like, okay, like where are we going? How are we gonna get there? I wish still, like I missed the chapters that we used to get from Darlington in Ninth House. I haven't seen his chapters in this book just yet, but Darlington was a likable character, and I enjoyed reading from his perspective and also getting that break from Alex, because she's just annoying. So right now we're just completely stuck with Alex, and so I would love to get another perspective within the story, but I'll take what I can get. I find the overall pacing of this story just is really satisfying, overly satisfying in a way that I just really did not expect. We are moving at such a consistent and like copacetic rate that I haven't felt any down periods or really boredom throughout the story. There's been two moments where I was kind of like side-eyeing what was happening, and I was a little nervous about like what new things, new beings, new creatures may be coming into the story. So I definitely thought that that was a little odd. And now that I am tracking and like tabbing areas where I feel annoyance or irritation with Alex, I'm finding that it is quite often. She is just such a relentless bitch that I have no choice but to just acknowledge her for who she is, even if I don't necessarily like her. But I think that the grit that it takes to deal with everything that Alex has dealt with in her life and to deal with everything that she's dealing with now and moving throughout life in such a like lonesome way, because even though she has individuals around her that are helping her move towards these goals, she's very much still a solitary person, especially like with her thoughts and the way that she sees the world. And she is just so unrelenting in the face of like death and danger. And just, yeah, there's a sentence in the book where she's described as an unintended consequence that just kind of blows through the world, and everyone around her feels the collateral damage of just having an association with Alex. And I feel like that was the best way to describe her. And it's like she's such a fucking tornado that, like, unfortunately, if you come in contact with her, your life is going to take a turn for the worse. And that's not necessarily always her fault, but she doesn't give a fuck either. So it's like, you know that you're kind of like destroying people's equilibrium of their life, but does she care? No, she doesn't. So I feel a mixed bag of emotions for everyone within the story. I don't think that there are any good guys here. I do wish that I could appreciate some of the other things that Lee Bardugo is doing with the story, because I think that Yale is such an exclusive place, and she has a really intimate understanding of Yale University because of course she went there, she graduated from Yale, she was a member of one of the secret houses that is actually mentioned in this book. And just the descriptions of the buildings and the courtyards and the graveyards and the translation of Latin context and all of these different like ancient elements, I wish that I had more context than I do, because I feel like if I had some type of intimate understanding of Yale, if I had visited the campus before and got to see these things in person, I really feel like I would be blown away. But unfortunately, we're getting a really intimate inside look into something that we have no prior understanding or experience for. And so I think that that kind of helps combat like a lot of negative comments around it, because most of the people that are reading these books all around the world, we have not had any interactions with such a prestigious uppity university. And I would like to have a better understanding of how she is keeping it so closely tied and authentic to Yale while telling an entirely fictional story. And I'm wondering if some of the houses, because from my understanding, the houses of the secret society actually exist at Yale, and that some of them are getting a bad rap in the book that may not reflect how they are in person. So I'm just thinking about small things like that. But overall, like, we're 55% into this book, and I have really very few complaints. Like, I really have no complaints at all about the story. I have no complaints about the writing or the pacing or the plot. I'm very interested in that. My only really complaint is about some of the characters, but again, I knew that I don't need to like my characters, guys. But I can see this book being very frustrating for people to read, especially because Alex is just such an unapologetic bitch. Like, she really doesn't care, and she doesn't even like fake it. She's not even good at faking or pretending to be sorry or pretending to be caring. And I'm just like, damn, like, not even I move through life like that. Of like, if I mess up someone's life, I would feel bad. I would call them. I would, hey, how you doing? How you been? Have you been able to put the pieces of your life back together that I shattered? But I'm feeling like Alex ain't gonna call none of these people. She not. I can't say that I'm missing the lack of a romance. I am wondering though if Darlington is the romance, because like he deserves better, first of all. Second of all, does he even like her? Third of all, he's part man, part species, part alive, part dead, part everything. Okay, ain't nothing whole about Darlington but his name, and barely that, because his name is actually Daniel Arlington. So like, he just is made up of parts, and so is his name, unfortunately. So I don't even know if I would want to see that unravel. I don't know if I need a romance in here. I hope that she doesn't try to force it within the storyline. And if it is going to be a romance, I hope that, you know, it's not Darlington, because he deserves more for what he's went through. Okay. For the trouble that he's been throughout this story. I think that it's interesting to have a character so closely centered around the plot that we as readers do not interact with. We don't get to see them. We don't get their perspectives or their POVs. And I didn't think that this is something that was going to work for me, especially because if I look at Crescent City, Danica is prevalent in book 1 and book 2 in terms of the plot, and we don't get her POV. We don't get to spend an intimate amount of time with her in the same way that we don't get to know Darlington. And I felt immense frustration with that, and I just didn't care about her. I didn't connect with her. So I am slightly impressed that she is making me like tolerate a character that I don't even know. Like, do I want him to be saved? I guess, sure. If that's what we're doing, if that's what everybody wants to vote for, I won't be a naysayer. I won't say no to that. But do I care? Not really. But do I, like, am I angry about it? No. Like, I'm okay. Like, if we all want to go save the day for Darlington, then cool. Why not? In other news, I got an early edition, an arc of Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. And then I got the Fairy Loot edition a couple of weeks before the book came out. And I didn't realize that the release date for this book was also today. They were released on the same day. And I started reading the arc before I got my beautiful Fairy Loot edition, and then I switched to just reading this one, and I am like 70 pages from the ending, and so I'm going to put down Hellbent because I've been reading it literally all day, and I'm going to settle down and wind down and get ready for tomorrow, and I'm probably going to try to knock out the remaining 70 pages of this book because I don't want it to just be sitting here. The goal for tomorrow is to be done with this book and Hellbent and be able to enjoy the rest of my week, maybe pick out some new reads. I'll probably take a day or two off from reading and maybe do like a weekend reading vlog, because I want to do like some mood reading or maybe like a fun type of TBR for my weekend reading before I have to go back into another project that I'm working on. So yeah. Those are my thoughts, and I will check in with you guys when I have more to say about Galaxy Stern. We picked up pace tremendously in this segment. Now, Ninth House was the first book that I read by Leigh Bardugo. I've mentioned that before. But going into this book, I have since read everything by Leigh Bardugo. And one thing that I find very interesting is that I don't feel like we have wasted any amount of time in this story, which is a little unlike her. I feel like there's always a bit of like reprieve from the plot in her other stories. And it was one of the biggest complaints that I heard from the King of Scars series that I have to agree with, is that readers felt like there was a lot of time wasted in Ninth House and in King of Scars, and especially in Rule of Wolves. It took a while to get to where we like needed to go. And while I was hoping that she would rectify that in this book and that we wouldn't waste as much time as we have in the other books and in the first book in this trilogy, I am surprised to say that I don't feel like we've wasted any time at all. Like, the plot has been moving so consistently throughout the entire book. We just kicked it up a notch, but it felt like appropriate. Like, everything that we have been seeing come into the story and be introduced, all of the different like side quests that Alex has been on, they continue to tie into the plot before you even start to wonder like, what was this for? And like, even so many things that I expected to be in the story as just fluff and to be there for posterity's sake are relevant to the story. So I'm pleasantly surprised by that. So I mentioned before that there were some things in the plot that I was side-eyeing, even that like in this segment we got answers for, we got explanations for, things made a lot more sense. And so this book is just so much better than like I could have even imagine. There's also like this real delicate balance that she's walking on, because I was so afraid that we were going to waste time and that we were going to keep trying and failing, and we're doing both of those things in a way that doesn't make me upset or doesn't irritate me. Alex is continuing to fail, but it feels necessary. It feels like she needs to run up against a wall a few times, like, and have that character development, because she really has been moving through her life like Crash Bandicoot around everything. And so, like, as much as I didn't want to just see her fail continuously for no purpose but to draw out the story, all of this feels appropriate. It feels necessary. And as someone who doesn't really like Alex as a character, I'm having a decent time watching her flounder and fall on her face and run in circles around things. And then also, like, we're not getting success. And with that being said, even though we're not having success in terms of like what we set out in this book to do, we're not stuck in like a purgatory. Like, every time the characters get set back, it feels like, okay, I could see how that could happen. And we get such a big reveal at the end of this segment. And this chapter just ended right where part 2 is supposed to begin. So now that we've had this reveal in this segment, all of the setbacks that they came across unexpectedly now make so much more sense. Like, before, I wasn't even irritated because I was just like, okay, like, I expected some type of setback. But like, this answers so many questions. If we can keep this pace going, I would be very happy. So I have like 120 pages left in the book. So we'll definitely be finishing, because it is only 9 o'clock at night for me. So I can definitely knock this out before I go to bed. I mentioned before that I was tabbing areas where Alex got on my nerves. Another tab that I have is for like my what the fuck moments of like things I was taken aback by, were just like jaw drop for, of like, what the fuck is going on? Like, when did this become a thing? I was tabbing those as well, and I have literally like 17 of them. 17 tabs alone of just me being like, what the fuck? But like, not in a bad way, a good what the fuck. So we love that. I'm having a very like discombobulated experience reading this book, because I think I have equal amounts of anger and irritation tabs around Alex as I do with me just being like, okay, like, this is really interesting. And I don't know if that's a reading experience that other people will appreciate in a way that I do. Like, that's something that I like. For a lot of people, if a book makes them upset or makes them really angry, that is grounds enough for them to hate a book or dislike a book. But not necessarily me. Like, I can be very enraged by a book and still enjoy it. In the same way that like I can watch TV shows or movies and like have to deal with characters that I hate in a TV show, but like still somehow I sit on my couch and click the next episode repeatedly, and I end up running through and like binging all the seasons watching characters that I hate, and I'm literally just like screaming at my TV. And so this kind of feels like that, where like I don't really like anybody in the story, but I'm still eating it up. That's how I feel about this book. The way that I'm feeling right now, if I was to rate this book, it would be a solid 4 stars. Like, solidly 4 stars. But I do feel like there is a possibility with the ending for her to like blow me away. Like, I'm not anticipating it. I don't expect it, but I feel like we've set up the layout and the landscape enough for me to end this book like destroyed or completely. Like, I might have another like what the fuck tab by the end of this book. So I'll be back to update you guys in a bit. I am officially finished with Hellbent. It was a ride for sure. I think that like for the majority of the book, I could see a lot of the threads that Lee Bardugo was weaving, and I could see the different directions, but I wasn't really sure. And I didn't realize that what she was doing was tying the story into a knot until she pulled all the strings. Every aspect of the plot bared fruit by the end of the book, and that's just very satisfying for me. I really don't feel like I had any time wasted within the story. It was a very solid book too, and where we ended, I was at first, everything seemed to like come into like this point where it was tied into a knot, and I was just like, okay, like this feels like it could have been a duology, and like this could be it. How are we going to go into a book 3 when we've like accomplished all these different things that we set out to do? But literally in the last like page or so we got some like insight into what book 3 is going to be about. So technically where the book ended, we were set back in terms of the things that Alex was trying to accomplish, but I'm very excited for book 3 because now she's not alone, and watching her suffer and just fail in this book repeatedly was a sight to see. And now we're going to see her take on these big goals, but now she has little demons by her side. So I'm very much looking forward to book 3. Overall, I'm glad that I decided to continue with the series because I feel like it's going to be very solid. Like, I really hope that book 3 does what it needs to do. I feel like we're gonna be getting additional POVs in book 3 from characters that I will like, so I'm also looking forward to that. Thank you guys for coming on this journey with me as I read Hellbent. If you've made it to the end of the video, leave me a fire emoji and I will see you guys next time.